In this quick how-to guide, we're going to be looking at the use of Twitter lists. If you've not heard of lists before, that's absolutely fine because it's a function which not many people seem to use, but could be incredibly useful for your community radio station. What Twitter lists allow you to do is, rather than following people and clogging up your newsfeed, you can actually segment people into lists so that you can just go and look at their profile, look at those kind of people at the time that's appropriate to you. Let me show you an example. If I click on my account and I go down to lists, then we have a number of lists that we use as a business. We have a news list, places where we know that we can go for interesting news that we might want to share with our followers. We've got a clients and friends list, which is the people that we currently work with and people that we network and speak to on a regular basis. If you have a look down the list, you'll notice a slight difference on the end of the clients and friends list in that it's got a little padlock symbol. What that means is that that list is private rather than public. When creating Twitter lists, you've got the option of making them either public or private. Public meaning the entire world can see it, they can look at your list, but they can also follow your list as well, so they can access the people on your list and look at them in this separate filter, rather than being part of their main feed. And private, which is if you have a list that you don't necessarily want to share with the world, or you think is of no interest to anyone apart from yourselves, then making it private so you're the only person can see it might be a good idea. If I click into a list, then what you will see is the tweets purely from the people who've been added to that list. And you can see on the side here that there are 45 members of this list, people that we think in the Northwest supply interesting news. If I click on that list, you can actually see who those members are. Now, lists can save you a lot of time, because if somebody's already created a list that you'd be interested in, it saves you the time of searching and finding people to add to the list. You can just subscribe to the list that somebody else has created. So let's have a look and see if we can find a list of community radio stations. So how would you search for a list? Unfortunately, some time ago Twitter removed the ability to be able to search Twitter itself for lists, so we have to go on a slight workaround using Google. So if we open up a new Google browser, now we're in Google, the address that we have to type into the bar is a little different to a usual Google address because we're going to put some filters into the address as well. So by typing site:/twitter.com in URL:/lists followed by community radio, then what that's going to do is allow us to just search all Twitter lists for the term community radio. Now you could take the word community radio out and replace it with absolutely anything. It could be local bands, it could be Peterborough, it could be Halifax, whatever you want that word to be, but it will then search Google for lists on Twitter relating to that subject. So if I click enter now, then it will take us to a number of lists on Twitter, and we can see there are a couple that might be of interest to us here. So the first one here is list members, community radio members in the UK. So if we open that one, and then if we scroll down slightly, you'll also see there's a list here created by Radio Regen of community radio stations in the UK, so we'll open that one as well. Now if we have a look at these lists, so this first list we found from Radio in the UK has a number of radio presenters on it, and as we scroll down we can see it's a mixture of stations and presenters. Now if we have a look at the numbers at the top, we can see that there are 53 different members to this group. There are also 5 people that have chosen to subscribe to this list, meaning that they can access it whenever they want to and see what all these people are talking about. If I click on this members list, we can see all the accounts that have been added. Now also if we click on subscribers, we can see which accounts have actually followed this list because they've got an interest in the people that are on it and what they're saying. Let's have a look at the Radio Regen list. So this one is a much more extensive list, 158 members, and as you can see, as I was actually on, another tweet came through from another station, from Radio Decorum. But if I click on this list, then I can see that there is a list of 158 community radio stations around the UK. Now if you're interested in community radio and want to see what the rest of the world of community radio is tweeting about, sharing the type of content they're producing, this is a great way to be able to do so. And if I wanted to follow this list myself, all I have to do is click on the subscribe button, my name will be added to it, and I can then come back to this list whenever I want to. I would highly recommend, if you want to know more about how Twitter was being used by community radio stations in the UK, then this is certainly a list that you should follow. And keep an eye to see what other people are doing and perhaps inspire your own ideas. So how do we go about creating a list? So from your home feed, all we do is go to the top right hand corner, click on your logo, and there is an option for lists. Once in here, we can have a look at all the lists we've got created, but there's also an option on the right hand side to create a new list. You pick a name for your list, you pick a description for your list, and then you choose whether it's public or private. Now, a public list means that anyone can see it and anyone can subscribe to it. A private list means that you're the only person who gets to see it. Private also means that you can then add people to your list without them knowing that they've been added. With a public list, everybody gets a notification when they've been added. Private lists are often used within the commercial sector for people that are trying to keep an eye on competitors or any other people that are offering similar products or similar services to themselves, just to monitor and be able to adapt their own strategies. They're probably not as required within the community radio sector, but you may have your own reasons for wanting to have a private list. So I'm going to call this list Community Radio Leaders. For two reasons. I want it to be a list of people who are quite prominent within the community radio sector across the UK. Also, it's quite good with some lists like this to put attention-grabbing titles that when somebody gets added to this list and they get the notification that says you've been added to a list of community radio leaders, that's quite a nice feeling for them as well, and there's a good chance that they're going to follow us in return once this list has been created. We're going to have it as a public list, so all we do now is click Save. And that list has been created. So now, as we're browsing Twitter as we normally would do, we can find accounts that we would be interested in adding. So let's start with Radio Regen. We go to their profile, but this time, instead of clicking follow, what we need to do is click on the Settings tab, Add or Remove from Lists, and we're going to add them to our Community Radio Leaders list. And then we just close it down and they've been added. Let me just run through that example one more time. Let's pick another community radio station. So Bradford Community Broadcasting over in Bradford. I can go to their account, click on Settings, and Add or Remove from Lists, and add them to the community radio list. So it's as simple as that, and now we can keep creating this list and make it as long or as short as we want to. Now if I go back to my Home tab, click on our profile picture, go to Lists, and then if I go into the Community Radio Leaders list, which you can now see has 2 members, then it will just give me a list of all the tweets from the organisations that we follow. So this is a great way to see what people are doing on a regular basis and make sure that you're seeing the important tweets in your feed without them all just going into your main feed and making it look too busy. So a great way of separating off into subjects of interest. So how might you use Twitter lists at your community radio station? Well, there's lots of ideas. I think certainly being part of a bigger community radio network is really important for any community radio station. So subscribing to the Radio Regen list or even creating your own Twitter list of community radio stations is always a great place to start. You might want to create a list of all your presenters' show accounts so that if anyone comes to your radio station for the first time and they want to be able to follow a number of shows, it's very easy for them to be able to find your Twitter list of presenters and or their show accounts and be able to follow those. It's also a great way to keep in touch with local partners. If you have people within your area that you would like to see on a regular basis that you'd like to build a relationship with, making sure that you can see their tweets so you've got the opportunity to respond, to engage, and perhaps take it further into an offline relationship, then you make sure that you're not going to miss them. But Twitter lists are one of the most useful functions on Twitter that gets really underutilised by most people, so it's something that you should seriously consider using. Why not have a go now? Log onto your Twitter account and create a list of community radio partners that you'd be interested in speaking more to. It's a great way to keep in touch.